Welcome to Vinyl Spin YVR, guys. Today we are talking about the Beatles Anthology box set that just came out. That's right, the big one. A lot of people have given their take on this box set, so I'm going to try to give my own unique take. So if you stick around at the end, we're going to talk about something that could have been in this release, but as far as I know, nobody has talked about it yet. This is something that was so close that could have been included, so stick around to the end of the video to hear about that. Before we get into the hot takes, let's do a quick unboxing for those who haven't seen the contents here yet. So here it is right here. It's 12 LPs, right? Yeah, 3 times 4. It's 12 LPs over 10 hours of audio listening. Side profile, you can see the spines of everything inside. You got some information. All of this text right here is the track listing. So there's a lot there to be listened to. Like I said, over 10 hours. On the side here, you've got this nice the Beatles Anthology collection. The front here is a slipcase, so we'll take that off so we can remove the albums. And now you've got the glorious full spectrum of the artwork created by Klaus Voormann. So like I said, originally there were 3 albums in this box set in the 90s, and this mural here was separated into 3 album covers. I'll pull them out and show you. Here we've got Anthology 1, great collage of some early visuals of the Beatles. Now, you might not be able to tell unless you see this in person, but this actually isn't a collage of photographs ripped and stitched together. This is an actual painting by Klaus Voormann. He was a really talented artist. So if you get a chance to hold one of these in your hands, take a good look. If you open it up, you get some great liner notes, photos. This is going to be tricky. A lot of photos here again. Now if we get into Anthology 2, again, I really recommend finding a copy in person to look at to catch all of the details. You've got a lot of visuals from the early 60s. This is one of my favorite parts. You open it up and you've got the brilliant popping colors from the Sgt. Pepper era. You know, the psychedelic swinging 60s of London. And here is Anthology 3 depicting those final days of the band's history. Let me open it up. Lots of liner notes, lots of photography here from their final days. And last but not least, for the contents in here, the newest addition with this 30th anniversary that just came out in November 2025 is Anthology 4. So here it is, and the cover is just the same as what you saw on the front of the box set. Open it up. Some more liner notes. Now these liner notes, there's something for every single track in this box set, so that's pretty cool. So one of the really cool things back in the 90s, if you collected all 3 volumes, Anthology 1 through 3, is you place them side by side all next to each other and they create this linear piece of art. So individually, they all look like their own piece and you put them side by side and they all connect. The one gripe that I really agree with people on this box set release is for Anthology 4, could we not have gotten Klaus Voormann to create a 4th part for Anthology 4 to show, you know, the Beatles or ex-Beatles, we'll call it, in their later periods of life, maybe working on the new songs they did in the 90s for this documentary. It would have been great, especially because you can buy this Anthology 4 just on its own instead of having to buy the box set if you already own all the originals. And just having this be the exact same artwork as the front of the box set itself seems a little lazy to me. So yeah, that's kind of the one gripe that I do agree with people. I think a lot of the things people like to complain about are maybe a little silly. People love to complain, right? If they did this right, then there'd be something else that the public would find to complain about it. But that is kind of the one thing. Would have been cool to see some new artwork for the 4th installment of the Anthology albums. So again, if you didn't want to buy the whole box set because you already had the original albums, or maybe you weren't crazy about the price of it, you could buy Anthology 4 just by itself. And there are a lot of new tracks. There's, I think, about 13 tracks that were never before officially released by the Beatles, such as I've Just Seen a Face, Take 3, or I Need You from Help, Take 1. And then there's some other tracks on here that we have already seen before. They've been included on the Super Deluxe box sets for various albums, from maybe the White Album perhaps, or Abbey Road or Sgt. Pepper. They're still relatively new to the general public, but it's great to see them have a new home here on the Anthology. Now, there's a lot of theories on how people feel they should have mixed in these songs. All of the earlier Anthology albums, 1 through 3, represent the timeline of the Beatles' careers. So Anthology 1 is the early days, Anthology 2 is the mid-60s, and Anthology 3 is the third chunk of their time together. So naturally, you might think Anthology 4 is again going to be like the last of the last, but you do go from the beginning, the early days in the 60s, right to the end. So this is almost kind of like getting a condensed version of the Anthology, getting the whole career spanning thing, but just on your 3 LPs inside here. And if I didn't mention that earlier, each individual installment, 1 through 4, has 3 records. So again, there you go. You got 12 in total and over 10 hours of glorious listening. So some people have mentioned that they feel rather than putting all of this new additional stuff on a 4th installment, maybe they should have intermixed it into the originals. I kind of feel like that would have been cool, because once I reach the end of 3, Anthology 3, you kind of feel like you've made it, you've gone through it. And then when you finish off with Anthology 4, you feel like you're almost like backtracking, which is maybe not preferable depending on how you look at it for the listening experience and taking in the story and the history of the band. But it is what it is. I am happy here, especially this is great to have for those who don't want to or are unable to buy the whole box set, because it is a hefty price. Now we're going to move on to the real hot takes about this. So I'm going to kind of retell a story that most of you watching will know, but just to give some context, when they did the Anthology series in the 90s, Yoko gave them a couple unfinished demos of John's that Paul, George, and Ringo went on to work on and finish. And so in the 90s, they put out, the camera might not show this, it's so bright, Free as a Bird and Real Love Here. Now, part of the problem as they were working on these old demos that Yoko gave them was the quality. I mean, you know, they were just recorded in John's home. He put them on a little cassette tape, so he wasn't in a studio on professional grade equipment. He also wasn't doing official takes. These were just home demos for his own reference, to record the song, remember them, maybe take them into the studio later to work on and finish. So the performance was okay, and the quality wasn't fantastic either. Add another level onto that, over time tape does degrade, and so 20 years later in the 90s, when Paul, George, and Ringo are working on these, the tape is deteriorated, the sound is getting distorted, it's getting warped, it's getting fast parts and slow parts as the tape stretched over time. It really became a pain, so you got this weird sound. And in the 90s, with the technology, there was only so much you could do. They were doing their best to sort of mute the parts that didn't sound great. And they also found that they needed to add some stuff over top to kind of lean into the weird sound. And it kind of worked to their benefit in that John loved to put weird, crazy effects on his vocals. Think of Tomorrow Never Knows or Revolution, I Am the Walrus, Strawberry Fields Forever, a lot of distortion and weird, wacky stuff. And so Jeff Lynne, who was helping Paul, George, and Ringo produced this stuff in the 90s. The 4 of them decided, well, it doesn't sound great. It has a weird sound to it because it's so old. It wasn't done with great technology. And so we're going to try and lean into it and make it sound intentional, which I think was really smart. That's what happened. There was a 3rd song, Now and Then. This one really had tough audio to work with. And honestly, they abandoned it because they realized they couldn't work with it. They were also running out of time, wanted to get on with their lives. But they abandoned this one and just stuck with the 2. So if you're a real Beatles fan, you'll recall that a couple years ago, Paul and Ringo finished this because they developed new technology. Peter Jackson, who was working on the Beatles Get Back documentary, came up with this AI software where he could separate things. This was intended in the Get Back documentary so they could separate sounds from voice, and they decided ultimately they could use that to work on this last demo of John's where the quality was just really, really bad. And so they could finally really remove John's voice, separate it from his piano and any other background hisses and distortions and that kind of thing, and make it sound a little bit more in the studio. After finishing this guy a couple years ago, Now and Then, they decided to use this technology that they used a couple years ago and apply the same thing to these songs and completely take away all of those weird, wacky effects so you hear just John as he would be in the studio. Since they were able to now, they didn't have to lean into it and make it sound intentional. And here's what gets really controversial about this box set. A lot of people really love it, a lot of people really hate it, and a lot of people sway back and forth. Now, I posted a video a few months ago when they released the new 2025 cleaned up mix of Free as a Bird, and that got over 200,000 views and a lot of polarizing comments. So I figured I would share some of those comments and this discussion because there's a lot of misinformation, misunderstandings, and as I'm saying, hot takes. So let's dive into some of those and listen to the way John Lennon's vocals sound here. This is the 1995 mix. Okay, so that's the 1995. I'll show you quickly how they clean that up with the 2025 mix. So here's the newer version. Okay, let's go into some of the comments. So someone said the newer version is definitely giving demo quality. Pop the cassette out and throw it in a drawer like most others here. I'm sticking to the Floating Feather from the Beyond version, produced by George Martin, if I'm not mistaken. So people like to say from the Beyond or whatever, because with those effects that they ended up doing in the 90s to sort of lean into it and make it sound weird like John might have done, because John did like to put effects on his vocals, by the way. He was sort of insecure about it. A lot of people like how they did that because it made it sound like otherworldly, like he was coming singing from the heavens, and it kind of plays into the fact that, oh, John's no longer here with us, but he's kind of helping us finish this record from the heavens. So that was a cool thing that people love about the 90s. And they say produced by George Martin. So just so everyone knows, the 90s ones were produced by Jeff Lynne, and so were the 2025 version. So 2025 was not a Giles Martin mix. It was Jeff Lynne again. So respect to him. He was a part of it on both versions, 90s and now. Next person said, much better. I still love the 95 version. Weird, but it reminds me of the story of the recording. So again, kind of feels like John is singing from the heavens. He's no longer here with us, but this is making him sound sort of otherworldly, angelic. Next person said, the 95 mix is truer to the tape recording and John's actual voice. I'm sorry, but you can hear the AI on the 2025 mix. Now here is a take that I have a hard time with. So I replied with, the 95 mix is not truer to his voice. It is layered with both intentional and unintentional effects between the quality of the tape and how they doctored it in the studio to make it work with the song. With all of that removed in the 2025 mix, it is as naked and true as we'll ever get to his actual voice. And that's 100% true. And you're not hearing AI in it because there's nothing AI generative about this 2025 version. What Peter Jackson's AI technology does is it recognizes sounds and separates them so you can work with them independently. There was no generative quality. There wasn't John's voice being generated or created by AI. That's not what this was about. That's a big misunderstanding that a lot of people have. Next person said, the quality of John's vocal was part of the story of the track. They are erasing history and I hate it. Another thing I have is when people try to get mad and say we're erasing history. No, we're not. This was my reply. The 95 mix didn't go anywhere. Nothing's erased. Go listen to it as many times as you want. So that's one. You can listen to the 95 mix anywhere still. It's not going anywhere. Nothing's being erased. In fact, they include both versions on the box set. You can listen to the 95 mix or you can listen to the 2025 mix. Nobody needs to get upset. We're not rewriting, changing history or masking or telling lies or changing a narrative. Almost done here. So here's another one. I think they should have double tracked the new vocal like Lennon often did himself. It sounds a bit weak as it is in the new mix. That's a fair point. I said, I'm sure they tried that and had their reasons for what they ended up doing in the end. Guys, they're not idiots, okay? So yes, John liked to put effects on his voice. He wasn't super secure with it. He liked to cover it up with echoes and weird things, which is why a lot of the time he double tracked his vocals. Okay, I am sure they tried that. You're not a genius for coming up with this idea. I'm sure they tried that, and I'm sure there's a reason they did it the way they did, okay? And again, you can't please anyone, so they could have double tracked it and said you should have left it because he probably didn't double track it in his home demo. Another one, it sounds like a rough take. I don't feel like it's very good. Well, it is a rough take. This literally was John's home demo, okay? He was recording this at home just on a cassette for his reference. He was not in the studio creating, the master, okay? This is a demo. It's gonna sound like that. Okay, that is enough of the hot takes of these singles. One thing I want to say, and what I did put throughout the comment sections of these videos when I originally posted them and they went viral, is that everyone is entitled to their own opinion. It's totally fair. Everyone gets their say, and however people feel is valid. So people are allowed to be upset, and that's just the way it is. What I want to do is maybe set the record straight on some things and have some fun and friendly debate. So now we've reached the last part of this video. So there's a unique story here, and I guess I'm not the first to tell this story, that's for sure, but this is something that the anthology almost had. They could have had, and it really would have been huge to have on here, but it was one of those things, timing became a factor, and it just wasn't meant to be. Some of you may have heard in the news over the last 6 months, there was a record store owner in Canada, in Vancouver, matter of fact, where I am, who found in his back storage of his record shop some old tapes. He was digging through them. This one says Beatles Decca Sessions. It turned out, and it's been authenticated, he had the original master tapes to the Beatles Decca audition tapes. Now, this happens to be, and I'm super proud to say this is Neptune Records in Vancouver. The owner is Rob Frith. This is one of my go-to record shops. I go here all the time. This got coverage in Rolling Stone, in the New York Times, in CBC, probably the BBC, like everywhere, worldwide. This is so cool. He did get in touch with Paul McCartney, and he met Paul down in LA during rehearsals for their tour, and he ended up giving the tapes to Paul McCartney. So Paul now has them in his own hands, or maybe his team's hands, where they're going to store them and protect them and decide what to do with them. Now, the irony here, and the really unfortunate part of this, is that the Decca tapes are featured on the Beatles Anthology, and they were on the original 90s release. I don't believe they were from the original master tapes. It was maybe a copy or a bootleg or something. Still great quality, but basically, Rob Frith gave Paul McCartney the Decca master tapes in September of 2025. This came out in November. So that's much too soon for them to, remaster from the original master source and have it on here. It was probably a matter of months, maybe longer, because I don't know how far in advance they pressed this box set. But basically, I'm sure Apple is kicking themselves saying, man, why couldn't this guy have found these master tapes like 6 months sooner? And that could have been a huge selling point on this Beatles Anthology Anniversary reissue, that it now has a remastered version of the entire Decca auditions from the original master tape source. That could have been incredible, could have been huge, would have been a great part to the story. Unfortunately, the timing didn't work out. That could have been a thing. You can still listen to it, it's just not from the master tapes, to my knowledge. And who knows, maybe Paul will take Rob's advice from Neptune Records, Vancouver, BC, Canada, and release them as a standalone as the Beatles. Maybe that will be one of the things we see in the upcoming years, the Beatles Decca audition tapes as a standalone album from the original master tapes. That would be so cool. So yeah, that's what I have to say about this box set. What almost was, the hot takes. I love having this box set. I'm so happy to have it now on vinyl. I've always streamed it. There's a lot of really fun tracks here that span the band's career. You see them in really serious times. You see them in really goofy times. The variety you get here is just amazing. And just a big shout out to Neptune Records here in Vancouver, because they might have been the first shop to get this box set in the city, and they put it on their Instagram story, and I saw it and I was like, how many do you have? And they were like, just one. And I was like, great, I'll be there tomorrow. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think of the box set? Do you love the Beatles Anthology? Do you hate it? What are your hot takes? Remember, all commentary is welcome as long as it's respectful. And let me know what other bands or albums or box sets or topics you want to hear me talk about in the next video. So thanks again, guys. Please like and subscribe Vinyl Spin YVR for more content. It helps me keep going. It really does. One more time, I'm Josh from Vinyl Spin YVR, and I'll see you guys in the next one.